So a little background about me. I graduated Berklee with a major in EPD. If you don't know what that is, it stands for Electronic Production and Design. That's basically the music technology major. So everything about synthesis, studio technology, cats and synthesizers in space, analog, digital, all that jazz. What I was really interested was in recording, mixing, and sound design. So I thought it'd be fun if I started a new series for sound design. And what better way to start this series by doing something very weird and also giving you all the Berklee sound design secrets. So what we're gonna do is transform this drum sound into this bass sound. Let's dive right in. So, we got ourselves a drum sample. It's a drum loop, kick, hat, snare. Sounds kind of like this. And we want to transform it into bass. So here's what I would do first. So I'm going to grab the sample and I'm going to slow it down. And it sounds kind of like this. So it sort of granulates the sound and stretches it and interpolates it. My warp mode is in beats mode. So what it does is it grabs the sample and slices it into many different pieces and sort of spreads them. So we did that, and I'm gonna do it once more actually, because that sounds kind of cool. And what I'm gonna do is Command J, and that consolidates the clip. So we've slowed it down, and what I'm gonna do next is granulate it. That'll allow me to grab some knobs and perform it and mess around with it and see if I can get some tonal texture out of this. So I'm gonna create a new MIDI track. I'm gonna throw the granulator on it. I'm gonna grab the consolidated clip, put it in the granulator, make sure I am record armed, and I should be able to perform it. I have a keyboard right here. And I'm performing our sample that we just created. So what I'm gonna do is change the granulator mode to cloud and see if we can get any cool sounds. We're also gonna mess with the position over here, the grain size, the variation. We'll just mess around with the parameters and see if we can get something cool. Going into sound design, I'm mostly hoping for happy accidents. So what I'm also gonna do is throw a tuner in there and see if we can get a pitch. I'm holding a C right now. It's too sharp. This is the closest I could get it to a C. So playing with the shape gives us some interesting texture that we can dial in the way that we want. Okay, so I moved the position closer to the transient, and it gives us a fuller sound, which is exactly what I was looking for. Let's see what shape does now. It's like a filter in a synthesizer. So it's almost like we created a saw wave out of a drum sample. So we went from this, which is the slowed down version, to this. The next step is the basic synthesizer ADSR controls. Granulator gives us those. If we click here, we have our envelopes. So we have our attack. Give it a little bit of space to breathe. We have our decay. actually. I was aiming towards a sustained bass sound, but I'm kind of liking this punchy bass. Let's give it some sustain. And then let's play with the release. I want it to feel pretty dry. Pretty good. Then our next typical synthesizer control is the filter. Let's see if we can get a cool sound. Let's do a 24 dB slope. Crank the resonance up a little bit. It's pretty cool. So what I want to do is have this filter be controlled by an envelope. I'm going to use envelope 2 for that. And when I hit a note, I want it to open up and then slowly close down. So I can turn this up to 100. And I'm going to turn the sustain down all the way. And then I'm going to play with decay and the release. That sounds pretty good. So what I'm going to do next is record some MIDI notes for that phrase that I was just playing. So then we can consolidate it by freezing and flattening. I'll show you how to do that and continue processing further. It's pretty good. Command U to quantize. And what I'm actually going to do is turn the tempo up. Yeah, that sounds pretty good. Perfect. So the way I'm gonna consolidate this is to right click the track. I'm actually gonna rename it to bass raw. And I'm gonna freeze and flatten. Now the reason I like to freeze and flatten is so I can commit to my processing, treat this as a new sample, as new raw material, and continue mangling from here and keep creating, keep being creative. And I find that I get the best results when I just commit and move forward. So now we have this sample, which sounds pretty good in itself. But what we're gonna do is what I like to call emphasis, de-emphasis, EQ into distortion. So the first EQ boosts a frequency into the distortion, which changes the way the plugin distorts the sound. And then the second EQ undoes the boost that the second one does. So you get the distortion effect and the way the distortion changes depending on the frequency that is boosted, but you don't get the tonal boost of the frequency. So let's see how that sounds. So what we're gonna do is grab an EQ. Stock EQ8 works. I'm gonna grab Roar, which is my favorite distortion plugin in Ableton Live. And what we're gonna do is select both and Command G to group them. Now what that lets me do is I can open up the macro controls of the group and I can assign these or map these to the EQ parameters. So that's frequency, that's gain, and that's the Q. But then what I can do is duplicate this EQ. And as you can see, I can do the exact same moves because it duplicated the mappings as well. But then what I'm gonna do is instead of having it scaled at 100%, I'm gonna have it scaled at either minus 100%, which is the exact opposite move from the first EQ, or because I want it to be more intense, I'm going to scale both of the EQs at plus 200% and minus 200%. So what that means basically is plus 1 dB here means plus 2 dB here, minus 2 dB here. All right, and the next step is to move the Roar plugin or the distortion plugin in the middle, in between those two. Now let's get a good distortion sound. Sounds pretty good. To make it easier, I'm gonna map some parameters to my MIDI keyboard. I'm gonna click that, twist the knob, click that, twist the knob, click that, twist the knob. And now I can sort of change the frequency, the boost, and the EQ factor using my MIDI keyboard. I'm gonna have it loop and play around and see if we can get something cool. Okay, I like that. I like what I just did. So I'm gonna click record and I'm gonna do the same thing. All right, so if I hit A for automation, I should get that move. Sounds pretty good to me. What I'm gonna do next is freeze and flattened one more time. So now we have the distorted bass. Sounds like this. Sounds pretty cool. Again, we started with a drum sample. And what I would do next is compress it. And then I would probably add an EQ. So that sounds pretty good. Now let's do a nice trick that I like doing sometimes with bass sounds like this, which is add a convolution reverb and make it sound like we're in a room. So what we're gonna do is get a convolution reverb. You can either use the Pro or the normal one. And what I'm gonna do is find the type ambience and small rooms and find a reverb that fits the sound. So this is dry. Here's wet. I'm gonna reduce the width because I don't want it to get too wide, and then I'm gonna dial in the dry wet until I get the amount that I want. Sounds pretty good to me. So what I'm gonna do, freeze and flatten one more time. Here's what we got so far. What I would do from here is add one more compressor, and then I would probably add a little bit more distortion, and then I'll add the glue compressor, not to compress, but I'm gonna turn the soft clip on and slowly boost the makeup until I can see it start clipping, which means that we are touching the 0 dB point, and well, it starts clipping the sample. So it's sort of like normalizing it, but with some extra flavor. It adds distortion and it just grunges it up a little bit. And it's a good trick to bring up your samples to 0 dB. At the end of the chain, put the glue compressor, turn on soft clipping mode, and then boost the makeup gain until it just starts touching it. There you go. That means that our sample is picking at 0 dB. It's like using a clipper. But what we're gonna do first is compress it a little bit. I'm gonna add a little bit more distortion. And then I'm gonna clip. Finally, freeze and flatten, and there you have it. Here we have our final bass sound. So there you go. We went from this to this. And what's cool is that we can grab the original sample and put it over the bass that we sound designed out of it, and we get this. And this is a really cool technique to impose a creative sort of limit on yourself, where you give yourself just one piece of raw material, maybe it's one drum loop, like in this case, and the challenge is to create everything out of just that using sound design techniques. So you can grab the concepts that we talked about today and sound design anything you'd want. You could create a pad, you can create a lead sound, you can process it further. I can pitch this up, put an ARP on it, perform it again, put it through a sampler, create some cool unique sounds. I can granulate it further, create some nice glitching sounds for an ear candy. I can create a whole track out of this. I can create a whole track out of just one drum loop. And yeah, this was a different kind of video. If you enjoyed it, let me know down in the comments below. If you want to see more of this, you can give me some ideas, or you can give me some challenges. You can challenge me to create something out of any sample that, I don't know, just think of something, be creative, and challenge me down below. If you liked what you just watched and you want to see more, consider liking and subscribing, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.